Welcome to Capitol View, the weekly program on state politics and government and how it might just affect you. Joining me this week on Capitol View is a longtime person from Springfield, Illinois, now centered in Chicago, Amanda Vinicky, correspondent for WTTW television. Welcome back to Capitol View, Amanda.
Thanks for having me.
And also Peter Hancock, State House correspondent for Capitol News, Illinois. Welcome, Peter.
Good to see you, Bruce.
Amanda, you had an interview recently with Lawrence Masal, among other folks, who is the president of the Civic Federation. We're talking now about the graduated income tax proposal that is pretty much a centerpiece issue, I think, coming up to the November election here. And you've examined the issue in some detail, and you've heard some things from some folks that have been experts on this or purport to be experts. And over some period of time, they're not thinking this is such a hot idea. Amanda, what's the issue here?
You know, so it's interesting because the Civic Federation is one of our go-tos. It describes itself, and journalists think of it as a nonpartisan entity because, as you noted, it has this long history of weighing in on budgetary topics for the city of Chicago, the state of Illinois, and they always weigh in. And so it had actually been sort of strange that the organization had been silent for so long. We were all sort of waiting. If you thought about it, why haven't they come out with an opinion or a position paper on this? And I spoke with the director of the group, Lawrence Masal. He said that actually it was because many of the group's members were really waiting and believing that at some point there was going to be more substance behind it. It had been something like 16 months since the legislature passed both bringing the amendment to the ballot and then also a law that will kick in should voters give approval to it that sets these rates. And they were waiting for more. They were saying, okay, but what next? Because that is not going to be the cure-all for the state budget. So that was why they did come out against it, Bruce. They said it was for really a host of reasons, including that it wasn't progressive enough. They're not against the graduated income tax concept, but they wanted the rates to be lower for the low income people and then tied, sort of linked, so that every time if you had an increase, it would be an increase in step for whatever line along those tax brackets you were part of. And also they said they were waiting for something to be done with pensions, waiting for a grander plan.
Yeah, I think that I got the sense that they wanted to like this. They really wanted to like this, but they just couldn't like this because it was just one piece of a jigsaw puzzle that has, I don't know if it's got 1,000 pieces, but it's got more than one piece. And retirement income, I think, is one of them. We've also had the issue with Treasurer Frericks and the retirement income tax part of that, which that happened a couple of weeks ago. It seems, folks have talked about it, scheduled a press conference to explain what he meant when he said this could affect retirement income. And then, oops, just 5 minutes or so, no, I'm not going to have the press conference now. And there's a perception out there he got yanked back on a chain by the governor's office, which hasn't necessarily denied this. How can the governor, who's been the biggest proponent of this, I mean, from his campaign, it just hasn't caught fire? And then something like this Civic Federation, have they been running the campaign that they would have, could have, should have to get this going, and can they recover?
You know, I'm not sure if the coronavirus has helped or hurt the case, in the sense that there are those who say, right now, more than ever, people are unemployed. They are worried about their paychecks taking a downward spiral. And so this shows why you want to have rates tied to income. And this is going to cut your tax bill, is the position that the governor's folks, the Fair Tax Illinois promoters, are trying to make. And they say, the Civic Federation, well, those are a bunch of people who want to tax your retirement, and they've got a lot of wealthy donors. They're just protecting their own pockets. I think the issue here is that it's as if both sides are sort of trying to gloss over. I mean, it's a campaign, right? And so they're glossing over those details, but perhaps that may come back to hurt the governor because everybody has lived in Illinois. If you live here, you can't ignore those issues and pretend like they are all going to go away, nor can you really pretend and dismiss this element of distrust in Illinois government. And that for him is certainly a criticism in pockets of Illinois due to COVID-19. Others think that he's a hero and has done super, super well, of course, but that's where the challenge.
Yeah, I mean, you would think that with somebody. I mean, I'm with you, Amanda. I mean, I've leaned on or relied on Lawrence Masol for when he's the go-to guy when you have questions like this, and he's way smarter than, I don't know about you. He's way smarter than me, and I mean, he knows this stuff inside and outside, and you would have thought that the folks, the proponents of this, would have tried to have said, you know, maybe not job number one, but 2 or 3 down the list, get this guy on board and let's make sure that we've got that. And it just hasn't happened.
And, you know, briefly, because I know we got lots of other topics to get to, but one of the questions that I did ask him was, you know, this is a constitutional amendment, something that people have been talking about for decades in Illinois is one of the paths to getting the state on the appropriate fiscal, to getting our fiscal boat, you know, back in order. And he said, well, and I said, you know, so why not advocate for this, and then you can deal with the tax rates and what they are through law, that you don't need a constitutional amendment to do it. It seems like you're sort of biting your nose to spite your face. And he said, sure. Well, his reaction to that was, we understand that it's a constitutional amendment, but if it isn't paired with anything, it's not that it isn't necessarily now, it's that there has been zero willingness to even consider any of those motions. Again, I suspect that this might be on the part of the advocates intentional, because they want to just get this done. First of all, put their energy into it. And second of all, don't scare voters away by potentially making other changes that are going to lead people to vote no. But this is where, again, it might be a backfire because people want more information. It's their money.
Sure. Yeah. And speaking of scare tactics, we also have had 3 weeks ago, the lieutenant governor saying, vote for this or your taxes are going to go up 20%, which seems, you know, that it was an odd thing. I don't know if it was an odd thing or not for someone to say, but it was not. It was a fear. You know, folks are motivated sometimes more by fear than by hope. And Peter, we were talking prior to this show starting, prior to taping, about turnout elections, and this is an odd year, as everybody knows. I mean, we throw the book out the window with regards to turnout and absentee numbers. But you had said that the number of returned ballots coming back from Cook County and that area isn't as high as some folks would believe or expect at this point in time. What's going on there, Peter?
Well, we may have a bit of a reporting problem out of Cook County, whether, you know, how fast they are at processing the ballots, especially from the suburban areas outside the city of Chicago. Right now, as we're taping this, about 1.4 million voters in Illinois have already cast their ballots. We're getting close to like 25% of the total voter turnout 4 years ago. The mail ballot return rate so far, if you look at the number of people who asked for them and the number of people who've turned them in already, it's around 37% statewide. It's about 11% in Cook County. So either people in Cook County are not getting their ballots in, they're waiting until the last minute, or, you know, maybe the county just hasn't processed them yet. You know, ordinarily we would look at these kind of numbers and use that as kind of a barometer for voter interest in the election. And if that were the case this year, we would be shattering all records. I mean, nationwide, we've never seen numbers like this. But clearly, a lot of this is being driven by the COVID-19 pandemic. In Illinois, they automatically sent out mail ballot request forms to virtually every voter in the state. And I think early voting started, you could start turning them in around the 25th or the 26th. So, you know, clearly I think this is a very high interest election, especially at the presidential level. But how much of this early voting is driven by interest and how much of it is driven by the pandemic, you just can't tell yet. And I think there are political science graduate students who are just chomping at the bit right now, waiting for the final numbers to come in after Election Day.
Yeah, sure. And last check, and I apologize. I probably should have checked this more recent than I have. We were already surpassing numbers for requested ballots some weeks ago. Last I checked, it was something north of 6 million. I'm not quite sure where it stands today. And coupled, and you brought, COVID, of course, is the overarching theme to almost everything these days. And we're seeing now numbers in Illinois, and I personally go by the quick chart on the homepage of the New York Times, which tells me the 6 states with the highest per capita rate, and we've been there for the last 3 weeks. I wonder what effect that could have, because some folks are going to vote in person no matter what. I think it's like, we open Christmas presents under the tree on Christmas morning, not on Christmas Eve, and that's the way it's always going to be. What sorts of things might this COVID pandemic play if we continue to see these numbers? I mean, what do you encourage folks to come out and almost risk their lives?
That's hard to gauge. I think you're right. There are a lot of people who just insist on voting in person. And one of the reasons why we're seeing a surge in COVID-19 cases is because there are people out there who just don't take it seriously. So they may, in fact, go down to the polls. But on the other hand, you have I think the vast majority of people are very concerned about this. The idea of walking into a polling place and touching surfaces and touching pens and touching ballots makes them nervous. And so they would rather vote in advance.
Yeah. I want to bounce back to what you said about the lack of numbers we're getting out of Cook County. That's got some folks concerned. Any theories out there beyond just faulty reporting or late reporting or processing, excuse me? What else might be in play there?
Well, in a typical election year, you would have campaign workers going door to door, making sure people got those ballots turned in, even picking them up and turning them in themselves on behalf of the voters. There's not a lot of door-to-door activity going on right now. So that may be playing into it a little bit. I'm not totally familiar with how Chicago and Cook County are set up. I know when I cast my ballot, I dropped it into a secure drop box outside the Sangamon County Courthouse. It could be an issue with the location and the number of drop boxes available. Again, this is one of those things you're just going to have to wait until all the votes are counted after Election Day, and then look at the total numbers and see what happened.
Yeah. How many of us? There's 3 of us here. Between the 3 of us, how many elections have we covered collectively? Probably 30,000. Well, and I think about election night. This is going to be an interesting one. As journalists, we always get pizza, and there was this curve. Right, the dinosaurs that were around in the 80s and early 90s can remember trying to get that last number in, shortly before midnight, and we've had it great for a number of years now. It's by 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock. You usually know. Are we going to be staying at the office until dawn? And through the next day. Is
anybody at the office in the first place, Bruce?
No, I am not.
But already, sadly. Domino's delivers, as does Pizza Hut. I don't want to just say myself. Well, the last time around in 2018 in the midterms, it was kind of an interesting, at least locally here in central Illinois, where we're taping from. We had a marquee matchup between Betsy Davis Londrigan and Rodney Davis, which CNN frankly got wrong. They called it for Betsy Londrigan Davis, and she's not there. Rodney Davis is still there. There's been a lot of attention paid to this race. It's perceived this time around as perhaps a toss-up, and there's been no shortage of ads
that have been running on airwaves about it. Amanda, you're in Chicago, so you don't get to see all the Betsy Dirksen Londrigan ads, and you don't get to see the Rodney Davis ads either.
Nope.
Peter, you probably do.
I've seen one or two in the middle of football games or the news, which is about all I watch these days outside of Netflix. It's interesting. The campaigns have both gone extremely negative. And a couple of things about that. One is that very negative campaigns tend to drive down voter turnout. That would not work to the advantage of Betsy Dirksen Londrigan. On the other hand, you have this presidential race, Donald Trump at the top of the ticket, whose popularity rating is pretty low in Illinois. And that doesn't work to the advantage of Republicans that are further down the ballot. So this is going to be a very interesting race to watch. I think the last time I checked, was it Cook's Political Report that rated the race as a toss-up right now. So I think voter turnout could very well decide that race either way.
Okay. Yeah. And Betsy Dirksen Londrigan, my perception at least, and I guess I am entitled to my opinion, has gone negative in a way that she didn't, to a degree that she may not have gone negative that far 2 years ago. She's put out some ads that have, the truth of which have been called into question. One round by KMOV Television in St. Louis, which has questioned the veracity of her claim, or that Rodney Davis's family got first in line for the PPP program, and he voted to keep it secret. And the television station, I think with good reason, truth squatted that and determined that's just not true. Yes, Rodney Davis's relatives own some fast food franchises in Central Illinois. They're as entitled to PPP loans as anybody else. They applied and they got them. And the vote that Mr. Davis had taken would not have affected disclosure of his family's participation in that. More recently, and I wrote a shameless plug, I wrote about this today, Betsy Dirksen Londrigan had put out an ad saying that a local restaurant owner here in Springfield, Illinois, it features this person, saying that Rodney Davis's family got first to the PPP loan line and left folks like me out in the cold. That was the gist of it. However, that gentleman never applied for a PPP loan. And so it does kind of raise, I think, some questions about why you would feature somebody who's not applied for a PPP loan throwing rocks at somebody who did. And we've still got time to go. There's going to be a debate between these two tomorrow. Unfortunately, we're taping on Thursday. Peter, is this going to get cleaner before it gets something else?
I don't know. I mean, at this point, from what I'm seeing, the major issues are that Betsy Londrigan is trying to tie Rodney Davis to the multiple Republican efforts to repeal the Affordable Care Act.
Correct. And she did that last time too, but go ahead. Yeah.
It's about health care. Yeah. On the other side, Rodney Davis is trying to tie Betsy Dirksen Londrigan to the Michael Madigan machine and to the political corruption. I don't know how strongly that's playing, but those are the major issues. With regard to the payroll protection program, that program was fraught with a lot of problems. I mean,
no
Congress threw that together like on the back of a cocktail napkin and just ramrodded it through.
Cocktail napkins, but go ahead. Yeah.
And it was very popular, but at the same time, it generally favored companies that already had substantial credit relationships with banks or other kinds of financial institutions. Yeah. The small mom and pop shops, especially establishments owned by people of color who didn't have that kind of relationship going into it, were largely blocked out. So, I mean, there is an argument to be made that there were certain groups of business owners that were favored under that law and certain groups that weren't. Whoever put that campaign ad together probably picked a bad poster boy for it. But you know, these commercials get thrown together pretty quickly in the heat of a campaign, and that was not the best one.
Yeah, and your point is well taken. I mean, it's not like PPP was the perfect program. P doesn't stand for perfect in that equation. And your points are well taken. Some folks perhaps were left out, but this guy, I don't know. And the last
lottery in order to win it.
Yeah, and there was a lot of debate on the question of whether or not the recipients of those loans should be disclosed to the public. Eventually, you know, they were made disclosable, but there were a lot of people, including many Republicans, who thought that was, you know, a step too far in disclosing personal financial information of individuals.
Sure. And again, this is nothing new for these two folks. Last time around, if memory serves, and memory does serve, Rodney Davis attempted to tie Betsy, Dirksen, Londrigan to the infamous stovepipe hat at the Abraham Lincoln Presidential Library and Museum. It was a great visual. It might have been a bridge too far, but he's in Congress and she ain't, and so perhaps they saw what happened in 2018 and maybe decided let's try that. That seemed to work for the opponent.
You don't generally get a redo. This is sort of one, but obviously
it is one. Yes,
gone by, and so there's a lot that's gone there. I just want to add. I think it's interesting how this is really the only race that is viewed as a toss-up, despite the fact that in the suburbs, or even, I mean, think back to not all that long ago when the seats that are now held by Congresswoman Sherry Bustos or Congressman Mike Bosch were thought of as competitive. You have few seats in the suburbs here that are held by Democrats who are currently freshmen with Lauren Underwood and Sean Casten, Republicans trying to come in. But Jeannie Ives is getting some attention from the Republican Party. And then you did just have President Donald Trump endorse on his favorite medium, Twitter, Jim Oberweis, as he seeks to claim the seat against Underwood. So that's finally kind of getting some national attention, but really, it is the Londrigan-Davis race that is viewed as the one that is the most competitive, despite all of those previously getting attention. And I think that just shows both the Trump dynamic as well as Illinois. It is a changing. The suburbs are going more blue. Downstate is going more red.
Sure. And not only that, Amanda, whoever wins this race, I mean, we've got the census coming up, and what are the odds that we're going to keep all the congressional seats we've got now? Not good. We're going to probably lose one as due to redistricting. And so this could end up being more important, perhaps, and every election is important, but perhaps even more important than it was a couple of years ago. And I think we all remember that great visual of folks waiting to vote at University of Illinois from 2 years ago, where they were just circled around a staircase. That just, I mean, it was like, geez, why can't, on one hand, it was, why can't they get more voting machines? On the other hand, boy, this makes your heart, warms your heart about the future of democracy. We don't have that this time around. There's no, there isn't, I mean, and this has permeated every shade of politics, as we know, from the presidential election, which tonight we'll be having the debate, presumably the final one. But folks can't get around it. It doesn't feel to be that. You can't have those rallies. You didn't have the state fair. It's going to be very interesting, I think, to see how a virtual campaign plays. You know, not in this race, but just in this race, but a lot of others. And there are a lot of other races, and we're running short on time. But I'd like to talk a little bit about Michael Madigan, the embattled, so to speak, state house speaker, who seems to have no trouble raising money. Despite accusations and suspicions against him. What's going on, Amanda? And how much can this difference might this money make? We've got 1 minute.
You know, so I won't go too far into the dollars and cents, because really I think what the takeaway here is that it is a lot of money. Unions in particular still consider Michael Madigan to be their guy. Legislative leaders, and plus, because of course he's the chairman of the Democratic Party of Illinois, he can filter all of that money. It's not because he has a race. P.S. He doesn't right now. He is going to be a member of the Illinois House. He's got no competition. It is so that he can spread it around to other people's races. And by the way, of course, that does help him for the race that is really going to matter. And that is the vote that will take place in January for the next Speaker of the Illinois House. So it really is incredible. I think people in Illinois and elsewhere would be shocked. Hey, wait, you have a guy that was part of this deferred prosecution agreement and he's still fundraising like mad, the most prolific in Illinois? Well, yes.
In fact, he is. And so clearly the Madigan name, the Madigan brand is not causing a lot of folks to say, no, thanks, I don't want your cash. And that's is perhaps not overly surprising. And with that, we are out of time. And so thanks, everybody, for joining us on Capitol View. And we'll see you again next week.